On this episode of Mountain Time, Ted is trying to fill his last tag. Hunter Ted Ruiz takes a rocky ride through the hunting terrain in District 6 within the Sierra Nevadas, sharing his favorite stories, local hills, and some hunting tips.
So here we are in Ted's deer camp. My guys always wonder, Simon and Matthew always wonder, what does he do up there so much? So I thought I would bring him up today and let him see what I do in the woods. Been a pretty good year so far. Got one deer during archery. Since then, I've let 4 deer go, hoping to save one of them on hoof for Teddy or Cassidy when they came up. They've gone home now. We've got 1 week left in the season, and I think it's time I get serious and go ahead and fill my second tag and fill my freezer. Okay, this is one of my little secret traditions. Cody Kyle makes a special brew for me. And hunting is all about traditions and superstition. So put about enough to get up to the bear's feet, and cheers. Now we'll see some deer. All right, well, we're leaving my deer camp. Gonna head out in the woods. First stop, I'm gonna take you in where I started hunting years ago. Chiwanaki. It's a Boy Scout camp, and that's where I got my deer during archery this year. And that's where Kenny, my middle son, got his first deer. That's where my dad got his first deer. And we'll go see if we could at least see some doe and fawn. Okay, so the first probably 6-7 years I hunted this area, I was coming up with my dad. And my dad, bless his heart, he had one way that he would hunt. He would drive up here just before the lock gate of Camp Chiwanaki, where you drop into the Boy Scout camp. You can't hunt in there. And he would come up on this rock and he would sit here, no matter if there were a sign that there were deer here. He hunted the same way every year. Poor guy never got a deer until after his grandson got a deer. And yeah, his rock is back over there, over this hill. And he would race down here opening morning, and about half the time he would get here first. About half the time, some lady would beat him. And every year this lady would come in, she'd get a buck off that opening morning. And every year my dad beat her here, he wouldn't get a deer. And he gets so mad, what the heck is going on? How come she's always getting a deer? Well, then I finally saw how he hunts the rock. He sits up on top of this boulder, like it's a throne, and he's sitting there looking around, stands out. You can see him hundreds of yards away. I talked to the lady. I said, so, how do you always get so lucky on that rock? She said, well, I don't sit up on the rock. I lay down on the rock and I just look over the top with my eyes. That way the deer don't see you 100 yards out before you see them. That's the secret to hunting that boulder. Okay, so I hunted D7 about 6-7 years. Never even saw a legal buck. I was with my dad and we had one way we would hunt. So I got tired of not seeing deer, so I went up with some friends to D6. The first year I get a buck. So I started going to D6. I kept getting a buck every year. And it was just such a long ways to drive for like a 2-3 day hunt. So I decided I'm going to go back to D7. I learned more about hunting. So I had my motorhome. I didn't have a Jeep or a truck. And I was frustrated driving my motorhome around, so I thought I'm going to go on about a 3-day backpack trip. So I loaded up my motorhome. I didn't know this area too well. I said, I'm going to go hike to the backcountry behind Shaver and go see if I can get a deer. So I'm driving my motorhome really fast through here because it was daylight, just starting to get daylight. I was trying to get down there and start my hike. I look ahead on this turn and about 5 deer run across the road and up this hill. And I'm in my motorhome and I thought I saw horns on one, and I stop right here and I look up on this hill, and all the other deer had taken off except the one. There's a buck standing there, so I get out, motorhome, I get up, I drop my first buck in D7, and since I was in my motorhome, all I had to do is I pulled around the corner up here, parked on the back side of the hill, only had to drag the deer about 30 yards downhill, had all my cleaning stuff and water in the motorhome, so we call that Motorhome Mountain. Each of these mountains has a name that we've given it, so when we talk to other hunters, we could know roughly where they were at, where they saw things, where their adventure took place. Oh, right there. Deer just jumped. Ready, Simon? Out here, be ready.
Hunter Ted heads into the forest near Motorhome Mountain after a possible buck.
Rather than going directly on him, I decided I'm going to go about 100 yards. I know this hill pretty good. I knew how I can get up and then see him from the side, and it worked perfectly. So follow me up the hill. The key to catching up with him again was knowing the hill, working up as quick as you can, but as quiet as you can, because once they see you, they're super, super alert, and they're listening for anything encroaching on them. Pretty much deer tend to go like 50 yards or so, and then they'll stop because they want to listen if anything's coming. So I wanted to get to this trail as quick as I could because I knew I could get quiet. And I guessed, there's no perfect theory on this, I guessed they would have stopped right up here. So I took this trail, and sure enough, right in there were 3 deer that had come up here, and they were waiting to see if they could hear me. Somehow I managed to get up on them without them hearing me. And they came up in here. I busted them again. They took off that way. I'll show you the tracks. Okay, so here's where those couple deer busted out of. You can see the fresh track. They came out of here, and evidently some went up that way, and at least one went down there. These here are doe tracks. I'm pretty sure all these are doe. Okay, one I think was a buck. I got good wide tracks here in the dew claw, and that was right now. This was one of the ones I busted up out of the brush, and it goes up here right on top of our Motorhome Mountain. That's a buck track right there. See the dew claws? Right now fresh, it's all kicked up. That might be a spike. It's a small-bodied buck, but that's a buck track right there. We just jumped. Be a legal buck. Dew claws back here. His toes right there. Let's go see where he went. A couple went down, but this is where a couple of them went. And by not going behind him, by flanking him, I got to get around him, and I saw him again right here. Right here on Motorhome Mountain. There's at least, I saw a bunch in there. There were at least 7 deer up in there. That was fun stalking them. I call that walking with the deer. So a lot of people say when the loggers are on the mountain, the deer, they don't want to be around the noise, the dust, and commotion. And so a lot of people think the deer, they're off that mountain. Well, as you can see, they're in the middle of logging. You might even be able to hear the chainsaws in the background. And what happens when the loggers fall the trees, the deer come in and they eat the fresh vegetation that's most tender on the very top of the trees. So you can see all this brush pile here. Well, evidently, we just jumped probably about 10 deer out of this very spot where they're logging. It makes it fun. Okay, so right off the Motorhome mountain, this just scooted off there. Now, that could be a legal buck, could be a forky or better, but by how small the track is and the softness of the ground, I'm guessing that's probably a spike. Could be a forky though. Dang, I wish we could have saw the horns. That would have made a fun ending for the video.
Back in the Jeep, Ted is on the hunt for a buck with some of his archery stories.
Okay, so I went like 5 days. The buck that I had scoped out on my camera, they got pushed off that hill by a mountain lion just a few days before opening the rifle. So I was starting my search all over. Well, sure enough, it took me till Wednesday of opening week to, by accident, come across where those deer took off. I saw one of them, and so I shot him with my bow, and right after you shoot him, you want to wait. So I left him there for a minute, made sure he wasn't going to run off. I got back in the Jeep and I took off, and I go just around the corner and I see the second buck that was in that group of 3 that was even bigger than my first buck. So I got out, I drew up on him, but I decided I don't want to use both my tags yet, so I let him go. But he was just around the corner from the first one. All right, so here's where my son Kenny got his first deer. I'd come in during archery and I'd set up in this little hill, and this spike fork came in and to eat, and I get my bow ready, and just before I raise up, my dog jumped. The buck sees that dog and takes off. So when Kenny came hunting, I said, hey, go sit up on this hill. So he came. This is the first morning ever hunting. He was 13. First morning ever hunting. He goes up this road. He goes, sits behind this log I told him. And in less than an hour, after going in there and sitting down, he got that very same buck. That was a cool story. All right, so this year doing archery, came around this corner. I had these 3 buck that I had on my cameras. The darn mountain lion chased them off the hill right before archery season opened. So I came up here. I was just going to scout this area. And right back there in this alley, I'll back up and show you. Right back in this alley, there's a buck standing right there. So I went up a little further where he couldn't see me, stopped the Jeep, got my bow, knocked an arrow, and shot and got him. He was about 35 yards. It was a good way to start the deer season.
As Ted is in search to fill his last tag, he reflects on an emotional experience with his old hunter friend, Baji.
There's a nice meadow back here that I call Baji Meadow now. And last year I came in here the day after a storm, and sure enough, up on this hill, there was 3 spike, and I saw 1 fork. So I get out, set up my shot, and drop that buck, and right away another legal buck comes out of the woods, and I could have got a double, but I decided to try and save that for Teddy and Cassidy because they were coming up. So this is John Biaggi's rock, how I first met him. He used to sit on this rock in a lawn chair, and all those trees used to be small, and you could see out there probably 60 yards to a big alley, and deer would cross back and forth in that alley. Well, after a while, some of these trees started growing up. So John brought his chainsaw out, and you can see there's a cedar tree there that he cut the top off, which now is growing up. It's got whole new trees coming out of it. And then there's a tree to the right he had cut, and that was to keep that alley clear. But it's just kind of a special place, and every year I come up, I leave a hanger or I write the year on a new hanger. And I've got these hangers all over in the woods. I've had friends that said, I've gotten out to an area that I thought was awesome, and I'll find one of your hangers somewhere on a tree or a bush out there. So if you're ever out in the woods and you find one of these hangers in that brand, you'll know I've been there, and it's a special area. This road used to be a little more open. I kind of make my own trail sometimes. But John Biaggi came back here, and up here there's a big oak tree. And he saw a buck eating in that oak tree. So John Biaggi comes here and he sees a buck, and it was standing on its back legs and it was eating out of that oak tree. And so he gets out of his Jeep and he shoots, and the buck didn't stop eating. It's still on its back legs, eating out of that acorns out of that oak tree. So he shoots again. He's going, darn, I know I'm not missing. He shoots again. He emptied his rifle. And the buck never stopped eating out of the tree. So he finally gets all frustrated. He gets out and he walks over there. Well, evidently that buck had gotten its rack stuck up in the oak tree eating. And that's how it died. So he was shooting a dead deer. He couldn't figure out, why is this thing not running? So he got over there, and for me it was a wonderful story. For me, more than even bighorns, it's always about the hunt, the experience, the history behind the area. So every now and then, because of high brush and low hillside, it really helps you to see a lot more deer by elevating yourself. Well, when you're by yourself, it's hard to have that kind of vision. So I've mastered the technique of driving from the outside with the roll bar, especially on a downhill grade, put it in low gear, and you can see a lot more deer this way. It works great.
As Ted continues his journey to fill his last tag, he reminisces at the Deer Cave.
Now it looks like it might get a little wet up here. That's never stopped us though. Oh, piece of cake. All right, so I'm with Justin Lopez a couple of years ago. We come up, and I call this Forky Meadow. Used to be hardly any trees in there. And Justin and I are coming down, and I look up this hill right up there, and I said, wow, the way the tree was shaped, it looks like there's a cave. I said, that'd be a good deer cave. I kid you not, within like 2-3 seconds, out comes a deer from that thicket of trees, and it was a spike. So we now call that Deer Cave. Great story.
Venturing into the forest, we come across Ted's trail cameras, a high-tech way of monitoring and exploring the wilderness.
One of the coolest things that just made hunting awesome is the technology of trail cameras, and they've been getting better the last 8-10 years. I'm now up to 5 cameras, and what it does, it gives me the ability to be in the woods 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then I come back every 3-4 days, check the camera, and you know if there's a legal buck by there, a mountain lion, a bear. But it's pretty cool. I'll show you what it looks like. This one has been up since about June of this year. And I check it about every 5 days. 6. This year I got a card reader. So rather than bringing my 17-inch computer out here and checking what's on the camera, pop this in on your phone, and then there's probably about 15 pictures of me setting it up. Okay, so I set this up 12:15 at 12:30. An hour later, this girl comes in, which is not that long. Usually they'll ruin the area for a while, but you can blow through. Ooh. Oh, she had a little friend with her. There's the doe, yeah, and there's her friend. And then the next one is at night. Okay, so at night, it's hard to tell, but I got a little forky here. The bucks, for some reason, tend to come out at night. But it's nice to know they're in the neighborhood. Okay, so just a couple deer, one cameraman, and one forky that went through at night. So what I'll do, I'll format this card. I saved the pictures I wanted on my phone. Format this card, yes. We'll put it back and see what comes by in the next few days. This is one of the things I like about deer hunting. It's always a changing game. I had a camera really just about 100 yards over the hill up there. Always getting deer on it, and about a week ago I quit getting deer on it. So it's like, wow, where the heck they go? So I decided to make a hike, and I went way down the hill, down below, and made a loop, and I came across this. And there's a bed here. There's a bed right here by our camera guy. There's a bed here. There's a bed, deer bed here. All over down in here, there's all kind of beds. So basically, you know, what that shows you is every few days or a week or so, the deer change to the next little hill, and it might only be 100 yards, it might be a half a mile, but you always got to stay on what they're doing. That's one of the benefits to having the trail cameras, because you can always keep up on what the deer are doing, even when I have to be at work, which during hunting season may not be a whole lot. This is another spot that I like. Never gotten a deer out of here, but I've been coming occasionally, sitting since over here, since 2003 at least, and I know it's been 5-10 years before that. I got another hanger here from this year, and then I have another hanger I found over there from 2012. But the reason I like this spot, you got a good draw where deer can come in from over that hill, come up from that hole down there. They can come from crossing the street or from down that side. And it's just kind of a nice, quiet, peaceful spot. You get to watch a nice sunrise or a sunset from here. But the reason I like this spot, a number of years ago when it was becoming the transition where I was taking my dad out and more watching him, helping him hunt than vice versa. I parked my dad up here. I said, I got a real good spot. I knew it was easy to get to. So I park him here and I go off hunting. He calls me on the radio. He calls me on the radio and says, Dad, I got a pack of coyotes that are gonna eat me. Evidently, a pack of coyotes came from off the hill and they surrounded him on the rock. And he thought they were gonna eat him. But anyway, I love telling that story just because you can get eaten, but you know, it's pretty unlikely a pack of coyotes would eat you. Maybe mountain lion, but that's one of the reasons I like this spot.
Back in the Jeep, Ted continues on in search of a buck with perseverance and talks about why you shouldn't give up.
Okay, so here is another one of my top 10 favorite hunts. I've been hunting this deer down at the bottom of perimeter during archery, and I called him Bullwinkle because he had a kind of a cool bowl on his horns, and saw him a couple times and I could not get on him. And so the day before opening of rifle, I'd found he had shifted higher on this hill. So I come up with Teddy and Kenny during rifle season, and the day before we're driving and I saw him again. So I'm telling Teddy and Kenny, I said, good, we found where he shifted to on the mountain. So we came up, and that morning didn't get him. I saw him over on this hill in between that, and we hunted Saturday, didn't get him. Hunted Sunday morning up here, we couldn't get on that buck. And Justin Lopez joined me for the Sunday afternoon hunt. And he had to go home, so took him back to camp. And as he's leaving, he goes, "Ted, give up on that buck. Go find a new one. That thing's off the mountain." And I told him, I said, for me, the cool thing, it's not even the size of the horns, it's a story behind each of my buck. And this one, I named him Bullwinkle before the season started because of the shape of his horns. I hunted him during archery. He shifted. I found him. I hunted him during rifle that weekend. Well, sure as heck, after Justin told me, give up on that buck, just go find a new one, I dropped him off Sunday afternoon. I came right back that evening to give it one more try. And I get right here, perfect timing, I get right here, and behind that brush pile, that buck stood there, got out of the Jeep. I drove behind the brush, got out of the Jeep, and I got Bullwinkle. And that is why you never give up on a deer. It's an example why doing a good turn. By helping that old man, he showed me this area. And it's the old shaver dump, which a lot of people heard about, but very few have seen it. You'd see out here as you go along the mountain, you got remnants still where in those days it was okay for the town of Shaver to just bring their garbage up here and drop it off on a mountain. And they figured there's plenty of land, so when that got filled up, they would put garbage on a new mountain. Well, about 15, 20 years ago, maybe, a group came in, and you can see out here all the glass as we go by it. They came out here and they cleaned up most of the metal and debris. There were old cars back here, but it's kind of a cool spot to come back. It's really serene back here, nice and quiet. I'll come back here and do lunch sometimes. And it just, yeah, kind of a cool piece of history from the Shaver Lake area.
Just outside home base, Ted takes us through a real hunter's tree stand.
Okay, so this is an area that's become one of my favorite parts the last few years. The reason this is near the spot where we started hunting decades ago, and came up here with my son Kenny and his son Grant, my grandson, and we were looking at a couple places to put a tree stand. And so we were looking, and little Grant and Kenny thought this was the spot. So we moved the tree stand in, we put it here, we got it set up, and sure enough, opening morning, less than an hour into the hunt, I got a nice 3-point out of this, and I'll show you what it looks like from the top. So this is the advantage. The deer down there, one, they never look up, and two, it lets you move. You can move your legs so they don't fall asleep. You can eat and snack, and when you need to, you can get up and ambush them from anywhere in here. Pretty good tree stand spot. So from up here, you can see all the way down that alley. That's a little far for archery. About 90 yards, 100 yards the farthest, but you got a couple alleys they use that are 40-ish yards. Behind you, you got a couple alleys that shoot out the back of this ridge, come across here, and they'll come here. Back here, I used to go back there. I had to clear some alleys, but I've seen deer crossing behind those trees, so now during archery, I could shoot that way because I cleared the alley. And I rushed down a little bit. And the payday was first morning I set up here, about 55 minutes from when I came up. Two doe come from off that hill, coming up this way. Then I saw the 3-point buck following. Came behind that tree. When he got behind that tree, that's when I stood up and drew my bow. And then I had to watch him right here. I had to be real careful not to move too much. And he got right there. He still would have seen me if I had moved. Then he went behind those branches. I about fell out of my tree stand leaning over that branch, and when he got right there, that's when I let go and shot him. And that makes this actually my first out of a tree stand buck. Normally when I'm out in the field and I get my deer, I don't gut them out in the field, because by the time you either drag them or drive them back to camp, it'll be full of dirt and it'll ruin the meat. So I've gotten the habit now, I just throw it on the Jeep and I drive it up in this rock over here. I've probably got 8-10 deer on here, including when Kenny and I got that double that day. And I just lay it where it's downhill. I take a rope around that tree so it'll hold the top legs up, and you use a special zipper tool knife and you zip it, the guts fall out, and then you go back to camp and you hang it up and the deer's nice and clean. But yeah, this has been a good rock for me. Here's some remnants of my deer I got during archery, a little bit of the gut pile. Usually the crows, bears, and mountain lion will have it eaten within 24 hours, but lucky rock.
En route to Hattrick Hill, Ted takes us through his encounter with the Medusa buck.
Hey, another one of my top 10 favorite deer stories. I was up here with Teddy. I was letting him drive. I don't even think he was 16 yet. And it was during archery season. And we're flying up here. We got about a 10-minute late start getting out. So we're going at a pretty good clip. And we drive along this spot that became one of my favorite spots. And on the side of the hill, I look up and I see 3 buck up there. There were 2 forkies, a small fork, a big fork, and then what I call Medusa. And this thing had like 6-8 horns on each side, all curled up on its head like a ball. And I stood there in shock long enough looking at it. Medusa buck took off, and right here on this side of the hill, Teddy let me out. He comes up here, and I look too long, the second buck takes off, and I pull my bow back, and the big fork stood there, spun to take off running. I released, cracked him right in the chest. Teddy could hear it where he parked. He thought I hit a rock, and as it turned out, that thing didn't go 50 feet. Teddy tells me, he walks back, he says, "Dad, your deer's here." And he had never got one with me archery, and I told him, I said, "Teddy, okay, let it be." And he said, "No, Dad, your deer, it's over here." I said, "Don't scare it, I know." He said, "No, Dad, your deer is dead." We went up there, it looked like blood was just poured out of buckets. Get up there, and that deer was dead right then and there. Yeah, this is definitely one of my top 10 favorite spots too. The story behind it. This is where Hattrick Hill got its name. I got in 2 buck off this little mountain, and following year, it had been pretty warm up here, not a lot of deer action. And on a Tuesday, the temperature dropped like 20 degrees. It just went insanely cold. And I told Joni, I said, we're gonna get some deer action. So I took the day off work, I came up here, and I'm thinking, what's the sunniest hill where those deer get up in the morning and they're gonna wanna go get in the sun? And I remembered this side of this hill drops almost straight down into the valley. So I come up here, pull up on, at that time I'd gotten 2 deer off this mountain, pull up here, and I decided to take a big loop, and I walked all the way down, way steep, come back up on the ridge, didn't jump a deer, didn't see a deer. But by doing that, what I did, by accident, I forced a 3-point. As I'm almost to the top of the hill, I see a 3-point, move through, come in, went behind some brush, So I just, oh, I'm on him, I'm ready. Come on, babe, I got you. Because he had nowhere to go after that. It was pretty clear. All of a sudden, behind the brush, boom, it kicks, off goes the deer. I'm ready to fire, and oh my God, it's a doe. And I look back this way, and I turn this way, and sure enough, that 3-point buck had pushed the doe out to get killed. The male deer are evil, evil. Pushed the deer out to get killed, and he tried to sneak out the other way. I swung my rifle, and bam, I dropped him right there. And that was the third buck, which became Hattrick Hill, and it just so happened that it was a 3x3. Beautiful buck. I've got him mounted at the house in a European mount. But that's how Hattrick Hill got its name. It's now a landmark by all my friends and fellow hunters. We call this Hattrick Hill because of that story.
Hunting is not always about the game. It's about the new friendships with fellow hunters, learning the history behind each area, building self-awareness and a respect for nature. It's really all about the mountain time.